dance for joy or lust.
Welcome to Sensible Secondhand Classics, the series where we look at practical, nostalgic cars that are over 15 years old that you can buy for a budget of between £1,000 and £5,000. This is a 1982 Ford Cortina Mark V 1.6 GL. But is it any good? Should you care? Let's find out, shall we? So the Mark V Cortina, or the Cortina 80 as it was known in marketing speak, was launched in September 1979. It was very similar in many ways to its predecessor, the Mark IV Cortina, that had been introduced in 1976. That, in turn, was actually very similar underneath to the Mark III Cortina from 1970. A bit similar, really, to the Mark I and the Mark II Ford Granada, in that underneath they had a design that, in that case, ran for 13 years, and in the case of the Mark III 4.5 Cortina, ran for 12 years. This actually was registered in February 1982, so it's one of the very last of the GL models. The ones that sort of replaced it for the final few months when production finished in July 82 was the Crusader, which was available with 1.3, 1.6 and 2 litre engines, although you couldn't get a 1.3 estate in that trim. So the engine range started with a 1.3 cross-flow engine producing 61 horsepower. Then there was this 1.6 Pinto engine. I think this is 71 horsepower, although I've seen figures around sort of 68 horsepower. It depends exactly on what carb is on this. And this is an 82, so it has the variable Venturi with an auto choke, which I'm not finding, to be honest, the best experience ever. Not really. It doesn't run very well at the lower revs for certain. Above the 1.6 was the 2 litre Pinto, producing 99 horsepower. And then right at the top of the range, a 2.3 Cologne V6 with 116 horsepower. That engine had been increased from about 108 horsepower in the Mark IV, and it's not actually that faster than the 2 litre, which is why it wasn't necessarily the most sort of popular engine, because it used a bit more fuel and things. And this car, 0 to 60 takes about 13.5 seconds. It's not the fastest car ever. You could get an automatic Cortina, but the vast majority of them I've seen had a 4-speed manual gearbox. To drive, this is, well, I suppose it's a bit like a Hyundai Stella. That's not really a surprise, because the Hyundai Stella is very heavily based on the chassis of the Mark V Cortina. They kind of feel similar, although the engines and gearboxes are completely different in them. It just sort of reminds me of a time where, you know, people drove cars like this. This was the family car. This was the commercial traveller's car. This was just about everywhere. They were very, very popular cars, and even in 1982, this was actually the second best-selling car, despite the design dating back to 1970. So we're quite a conservative bunch, really, over here. When it came to the cars we preferred. The Fords just have this special place, really, in 70s and 80s culture, which, you know, really nothing else in this country does. It's not just a cult institution, it's just a complete way of life. And I'm very grateful to Michael, who's the chairman of Tesla Motor Enthusiasts that I'm part of, for lending me this really nice low mileage example for filming today. So here we are in what would have been quite a sort of familiar setting for a lot of these cars back in the day. I think this area was built in 60s or 70s, so certainly lots of Cortinas would have been here back in the day. This is a really late example of a Mark V, although it's not the very last. There would have been the Crusader model, which actually were very, very popular when the Sierra was released. People still wanted the Crusaders, and they sold about 30,000 of them. Overall, I think it was on like over 4 million Cortinas were made, and actually for something that to our eyes now looks really, really dated in comparison with the Sierra, there was such a strength of feeling for these, and it's easy to see why. This particular one's got some overriders and things like that. You could actually get an S pack on these to make them sporty, or a heavy duty pack, which gave you sort of stiff suspension and a bigger load capacity if you wanted to. So we'll just have a look in the boot. I've been trying not to lock the keys in the boot, which would be very embarrassing. Put the key in. There we go. And we've got some very nice tartan rugs in here, which is great. Actually, the condition of the carpet and the condition of this car in general is really good, although the paint on the rear end of the car is really poor. Someone's had an attempt at actually painting the back of it, and you can see it's all sort of cracked and horrible. The rest of the car is really good, actually, and it's done something really like 37,000 miles. So quite a lip, actually. And the Sierra that followed this also had quite a lip. I don't know what it was about cars of this time. So many of them are the same, but you had to, load something quite a long way over to actually use the boot properly. You can get in the state, of course, but that looks like it would carry most of the family's luggage. There we go. So yeah, although the rear end's not the best paint, the car still looks good. And these rear lights and the sort of glasshouse of the car, which were the main feature of the Cortina 80 when it came out in 1979 over the previous Mark IV, I think they do make the car look a bit more modern. They also supposedly rust-proof these a bit better than they had with the Mark IVs, which is why I think probably more of them remain, although the production life of both of them was quite similar, sort of 76 to 79 instead of 79 to 82. I think the very last Mark V Cortina registered in 2005. It'd been sitting for a while, although yeah, dealers are still selling these, I think, until certainly after 1983. The very early ones of these actually have only 2 slots in the front valance. This has got 3, sort of 4. And I think these are the original dealer plates, actually, from Gilbert Rice Ford in Horsham. You can see we've even got a really old tax disc in here. We've also got a label for a really weird old sort of alarm that somebody's fitted at some point in the past. I like the mirrors on this as well. Wheels are sort of classic. The Capris also, I think, use similar wheels to this. But overall, yes, it's just such an evocative car of its time. So we get in here. I've heard that lots and lots of these door bins get sort of destroyed because people use them to pull the door closed. But fortunately, whoever owned this car used the proper door handle. There we go. So windy windows, of course, GL specs. So we do get some amenities, but not too many. I mean, there's no rev counter in here, so this definitely isn't one with the S pack or a gear. We've just got some kind of normal gauges, although we do actually have a clock. There was a base model Mark V Cortina which didn't really come with anything. Heated rear window, hazard switch. So we've got fog lights as well, because this car was actually made after 1981, but with the 79 revisions and the Mark V, they did incorporate the fog lamps actually into the rear there. Apparently this glove box has been a bit of a pain in terms of actually wanting to open. Oh, there we go. Actually got in here nose handbook and a sort of quick operating guide as well, which is nice. There's a very shiny Cortina 80 or Mark V. Actually got some technical data on here as well. There we are. We've got power outputs and things like that, which says we've got 3 different actually power outputs for the 1.6 engine. I thought it was like 71. Apparently it was a 70, a 73 and an 88. That's interesting, isn't it? Actually that's PS figures, so it's a little bit less than that in BHP. But yeah, I thought it was just, by this stage, it was just 1.6. Apparently there were 3. I'd read that. We have got the variable Venturi carb on here. So it could be probably one of the lower 2, I think, on this one. Do we have the sort of performance figures on here as well, in terms of the 0-60? No, we don't. Got contact breaker points and idle speeds and all sorts of things, nominal curb weight. So it's a 4-door 1.6, so it will weigh just over a ton, 1055. There we go. Tyre size Saloon. I think we are on 13-inch wheels on this. That's interesting, isn't it? Right. What if I see which documents are going now? Michael's got his information sheet here. It's some information about the car itself. This one was actually made in Ireland, so it's built in 81, registered in February 82. The second owner had it for absolutely years, 35 years. And we've got a crook lock down there as well, which is nice, and some fake wood, which I like. So yeah, open the door again. Show the door bend. There we go. It's a bit better light there. And this nice velour trim. They made some revisions to the Mark 5s in September 1981, and this was built in late 81. So this is before the Crusader. This is you know, as late as they actually got. Although the dashboard's still quite similar actually to the one that came in with the facelifted Mark 3s, which was about 1974. And then it was continued into the Mark IV. Very, very basic radio, AM only, 4-speed manual. I can't remember if this is a Type 4 or a Type N gearbox. I've forgotten, actually. We've got the horn on there, which I won't do because we're in a, you know, built-up area. That is for the indicators and the flashes. We've also got, like on a Mark II Granada, we've got the lights are actually on here, and then the wipers are there. But if you were very, very careless, you could quite easily, when turning the wipers off, also knock off all the lights, which I haven't found to be a very good idea, particularly in this era of Ford, but that's just the way they did it. So yeah, a little bit of wood grain, eyeball vents, I think they call them, and about 37,000 miles, which is nice. Headlining's really good in this car. It reminds me of the headlining in my old Volvo 240. But considering how old this car is, it's over 40 years old, and the headlining's pretty good. Do we get a vanity mirror? What we do? Absolute luxury, isn't it, compared with like the base Cortina. Right, I think I better get in the back, viewers. Okay, no central locking or anything, of course. Straight in. I do like this kind of nice soft vinyl, and then the velour here, and then even down here we've got some more vinyl. Got some ashtrays that don't spin all the way around. That's interesting. One thing you do have to be aware of, this is something the same as in like something like a giant Dolomite, is the fact that the inertia for the seatbelt is there, so you can sort of get yourself in the way of that if you're not careful. Can we actually get in here? Yeah, I mean, we're sinking right into the seat. I mean, if I was like a small child or something, I think this car was enormous. It's so soft in here. Crazy. No mat pockets or anything. I think we put it to go up, maybe to the gear to get those, but some nice sort of trimmed head restraints or headrests. Do we have a centre armrest? Oh, yes, we do. All the luxury today. Wow. Superb. Yeah, I mean, the headroom is very, very generous because the seat, you sink right down to it. It's not the most comfortable position because my knees are really high up, but I do fit in it. This is actually Michael's driving position, and I found it to be fine with myself as well. Yeah, so far, quite impressed, really. Let's go and have a look at the engine, shall we? There we go, viewers. A familiar sight, I'm sure, to many of you. The good old Pinto engine. This case generating somewhere in the kind of early 70s horsepower. Brake servo right in front of the driver, excellent. The brakes, to be honest, aren't the best I've ever tried, but they're probably okay for the era of the car. Incredibly simple to work on. I mean, the cam belt cover is, well, it's there. I've heard of people doing cam belts on these in about 15 minutes, and I don't doubt that if you were an experienced mechanic, you could do it. And there's the air cleaner element on there with, yeah, the variable Venturi carburettor. I think was only used for the 1982 model year on the Cortinas. And if it were me, I'd be very tempted with this car just to convert it back to a normal choke. That's probably what I would do. You know, I think sort of Michael's wondering about what to do about it, because it is a bit of a pain. It's not quite running right. And there we go. I would have expected it here to say, you know, Ford of Ireland or something. It doesn't actually say that on here. It's just Henry Ford and Son. But there we go, yeah. T blue, or Titan blue, I think this is, 1.6 GL. It's all very nice and straight and original in here, isn't it? Amazing. You can also see how some of these cars had, you know, much larger engines. There was, of course, a South African version of this car where you could get a 3-litre V6, and I think people have even swapped V8s into here. There's loads of room. The sort of 1.6 looks absolutely sort of lost in there, doesn't it? Right, well, I think let's go for another drive, shall we, viewers? How is this a car that was useful for spy work by CI5? I can't even get my secret mission documents in here. You do sit quite high in this car in comparison with a lot of modern ones. Not necessarily a problem, it's just really an observation. Triumph Dolomite's very similar to that as well. First appearance in the media of a Mark V Cortina was in an episode of Professionals, which was broadcast in October 1979, although it had been filmed in August and September 79. Called The Purging of CI5. In that you see a red 2-litre GL model, HPU 7240, being used towards the end of the episode in an action sequence. That car, I think, was registered in July 79, and I think production of it actually commenced in June, so it was a very, very early one on a T-plate. Certainly you'd see loads of those cars in series like The Professionals and Dempsey and Makepeace and all that kind of stuff from the early 80s. Just a very common part of street furniture for years and years and years. Certainly this car was not in production when I was born, but there were absolutely tons of these around when I was growing up, everywhere. And it's one of the cars I think that has suffered the worst in terms of attrition. If we compare the sort of numbers that were made and the numbers that are now left. Not a surprise really, these weren't worth a lot of money for a very long time, and they were just something that people didn't really even notice at all. Certainly they take notice of them now, and wouldn't mind actually maybe a nice 2.3 gear automatic myself, although trying to get hold of one of those would be difficult, maybe with the 2.3 V6. Suspension, rather like in a Dolomite, does feel a little bit loose by modern standards. It's not the same really as a Mark II Granada underneath. If it was, maybe it would feel a bit different. Similar at the front, of course, but the back is a bit different. It's very different actually. Right, let's give it a little bit of throttle. Sounds good. Gear change is actually really nice in this car. It's a very nice positive change that's so much better than something like a Vauxhall Chevette. And I can see why it was really easy to sell these in very, very big numbers. All the sort of loads of different trims and special editions and all the engine options, including 3 different 1.6s, as you saw in that little handbook. and a nice comfortable seating position actually for a car from this time. I also see why Hyundai decided that rather than building the Sierra, that they were going to do something on their own and use one of these as a basis for the Stella. In some ways it's maybe a little bit better than one of those. I suppose in some ways it's not. This is a very easy engine to work on. It's going to be quite reliable if you do the cam belt on a Pinto. And certainly some people would love to use these perhaps on a daily basis. It's lovely weather today. It's already October, but it feels nice to be taking a car like this out. Got to get it back though now. Lloyd Vehicle Consulting stickers, t-shirts and mugs are available by clicking the link to the Google form in the video description below. So in addition to the base LGL and gear specifications, you get the S-Pack on L and above, which gave you, well, as far as the 82 model year is concerned, front and rear overriders, sports driving lamps, a nice S badge, a rev counter. This car doesn't have that. 4-spoke steering wheel. Actually, this car does have that. Revised suspension, sports road wheels, the optional fishnet Recaros. I'm sure some of you will know what those are, and a sports gear lever. Some of the other additions were the Calypso, the Carousel, the Huntsman that was in the States. I think there are only like 150 of those made. And the run-up model, the Crusader, which I have seen a few of those actually. These cars are built in Dagenham, in Taiwan, obviously in Ireland like this one, in Australia, New Zealand, South Korea by Hyundai, and South Africa. The year that the Mark V finished production, in 82, the pickup was renamed the P100, and actually we got the long wheelbase version of that. In South Africa they had both the standard and the long wheelbase versions. So viewers, should you buy a Mark V Cortina for your hard-earned budget of between £1,000 and £5,000, a sensible second-hand classic? Well, if you can I suppose find one that's not rusty and has had the void bushes, yes, the void bushes sorted out, and it hasn't got this weird issue with the carburettor that this particular car does, and maybe some of the other 1.6 with variable Venturi, then I don't see why not. You can pick these up for under 5,000 in good condition at the moment. I imagine nicer ones than that, so like the Estates or a nice gear would be a bit more than that perhaps. But having actually finally driven one of these, I'm very quietly impressed with this actually. And the steering's lighter than a Hyundai Stella as well. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video and comment below, and we shall see you again very soon for more reasonably priced nostalgic motoring.